Welcome to Deconstructing Digital, the podcast where we deconstruct the opportunities and challenges faced by the built environment when digitalising their processes. I'm delighted to be joined by Jon Ozanne from Balfour Beatty and Nick Elms from VolkerWessels on our episode today. Jon, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Love to. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jon Ozanne, the Chief Information Officer for Balfour Beatty.
Excellent.
I'm Nick Elms, the IT Director for VolkerWessels UK.
Fantastic. So both Jon and Nick come with a wealth of experience when it comes to digitalisation. And today we will be looking at how we take advice and turning that into action. So what we're looking for today is actionable insights that will help our listeners on how they deliver on their digital transformation journeys. So construction, as we know it, traditionally can be quite resistant to change. How have you overcome some of those challenges?
Well, first thing is to understand the person you're trying to deliver to. So in this world is an operative, so someone who's used to digging holes, being trenches, getting mucky and dirty. So trying to understand what's in it for them. So this is stuff I've learned from previous working through manufacturing and other areas around how do you then sell it. So you've got bits around safety, you've got a bit around getting paid on time, you're around competency management, making sure they're doing the work correctly. So that's a big area, understanding what the end goal person, what they're after.
Yeah. So the value for the end user.
What's in it for me?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's I do agree with Nick, but I do think it's a real challenge as we've led probably collectively now for 30 years IT teams. We haven't traditionally focused that technology on the front end of the businesses. So we're almost amateurs in the processes and the controls that are required by the operatives. So we need to be much more led by the end user when it comes to digital than we perhaps have been with previous IT strategies where there has been, let's face it, an element of in the center, we'll decide what's best, we'll choose the technologies and we'll push those out. Now it does feel much more of a collaboration, doesn't it, between what's right for the user and what are they willing to accept and what are they going to get behind and what are we happy with from a technology point of view. So there does feel a bit of a difference when it comes to digital versus IT.
And how are you managing that, really getting those end users engaged? Because as you say, that's a pivot in approach.
So I'm getting my team out to the cold face, which we did before. Before you'd be dealing with what traditionally white collar workers, offices, rolling out laptops, networks, Wi-Fi points. I now need the people from IT to understand how the business works. So getting out, so my team are now going out month by month, visiting sites, understanding how people work, what's the day to day, understanding working patterns. There's a difference between someone who works at 9 to 5, someone who works 7 till 8 in an office, and then again at 3 till 4, and on the site they're on doing work. So it's around understanding how the behaviours of that end user works and how we can support them, and then changing the team to suit that.
The challenge you've got with that is typically IT teams are never big enough to cope with the demand, so you can't surface everything. We're very fortunate in Balfour Beatty. We've got a fantastic listening post called My Contribution, which is an employee idea-led innovation program, and we get no shortage of good ideas and bad ideas, by the way, coming forward from the business on opportunities to digitize. So the challenge for us actually tends to be, how do we place our resource where it's going to have the biggest amount of impact? Because you can't service every opportunity that comes. And AI has just kind of expanded that. Everybody's got a great idea, haven't they?
And so how did you tackle prioritization? Because you say when there's such a breadth of ideas.
I think I'll speak for Nick and probably the rest of the construction industry when I say that not far from the digital strategy subject will be safety, quality and sustainability. They're core and critical processes for any construction firm. We all have ambitions to keep people safe on construction sites. We all have ambitions to eliminate waste, and the cost of doing things second time, third time are just outrageous. So I think you naturally prioritise towards where your biggest compelling business problems are. And for us, that's keeping people safe, reducing errors and reducing waste in the organisation.
Excellent.
And it's the same, I completely agree. Rework, obviously safety coming first, but then reworks and getting stuff done right first time makes a huge difference. We're wasting huge amounts of money and time just reworking stuff over and over again.
There's a statistic that says that the cost of rework could be up to 25% of the cost of an organisation in construction.
Wow.
So if you think about, we call it right first time. I'm not sure what Volkers call it, but right first time initiative is about eliminating all of those areas, which largely can be around being obsessive about following process. And I suspect we're going to get more onto technologies as the podcast goes on, but that's one thing digital does give us that we perhaps don't necessarily appreciate as much. It gives you, ultimately it gives you process control, because it makes people aware that we're capturing data, we're measuring, we're monitoring, and they stop cutting corners. So you get much stronger process adherence, and that plays benefits in both quality and safety perspective.
Excellent. I think what I loved about that as well is how putting that end user at the heart of it, like you can have all the best technology in the world, but if it isn't adopted and used on site, then it's not going to deliver the value that you're looking for and make the difference, especially when it comes to something such as safety on site. So as you said, safety is a critically important part of what you're trying to deliver through digital transformation. Is there particular themes or technologies that you've seen that I think can make a marked difference in that space?
Well, I think there's multiple ways looking. I'm looking at it from a perspective of making sure competent people are doing the work at the first, right, so I'll start again now. So I'm looking at, I want competent people doing the work first time. And when you find you're putting competent people into work, they're getting it right first time. So this is around managing. A lot of the UK construction, particularly in the tier 1 sector, is we don't do much of it ourselves. So whether you're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you're subbing out to multiple people. And then your ability to control who's carrying out the work diminishes. So a big part of where I see construction going is getting as much data in as possible. So we have 20,000 people working for us daily. Balfour Beatty have got a lot more. We're not sure what they're doing day in, day out. And it's not just sure what they're doing, and making sure who's actually doing it correctly. We do a lot of work around right to work, make sure they're competent, they're allowed to do the job, but the industry's not been great as understanding is the competent person carrying out this work at that point. And we did work previously around, and what we're finding is once you assess not just the person doing the work, but the person supervising doing the work, makes a massive difference to the ability to get right first time. And we've seen a huge improvement in that.
I think Nick makes a really good point that as a layman, you tend to think health and safety is about making sure you've got the right protection on, or your scaffolding is erected correctly. But it's a much broader subject than that. And I find the experts in our business that tend to replay back to me that it's not safety, it's about putting people safely to work. And Nick spoke about the very front end of that. Is how do we make sure people are competent, but you've also got to make sure they've got the right processes, they've got the right supervision, they've got the right equipment, there's the right progressive assurance and reviews going on as you go through that. So it isn't just about have you got your PPE in, have you got your RAMs? Yeah, of course there's going to be risk and method statements. It's a very broad subject. And every area we find that we touch upon, be it competence, be it how people are being tasked being tasked to do a job, be it the equipment they're using, there's areas for gain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're the same, but we're relentless on trying to eke every bit of improvement out of our quality and safety performance.
And that is where digital then plays a role to help to standardize those processes and capture the data throughout and provide that visibility.
There is that, and I think that's where things like AI and generative learning can really step in. So if you look, say you've got 100 tasks happening across your business today, which ones do you focus on because you don't have enough safety people, competent people? And you say actually using AI, understanding weather conditions, the supplies you're using, the area you're working in with the customer. Actually, you can say, actually, out of them 100, focus on these 10, because they're actually looking at a history of what we delivered in the past. Actually, these are the ones that are likely to cause a problem.
You mentioned AI, and I'm not accusing you of using lazy language, but we use AI to kind of refer to, I think, near enough all types of data analysis techniques. We still find there's huge gains in mining the information in quite traditional ways. We've got over 1 million observations, and we're getting 1,000 observations a day for health and safety, either good practices or near misses. And only recently we did a hackathon with another organisation that I won't refer to, that ends in soft and starts micro. And the opportunity to sit and look at the data in a different way told us only a few weeks ago that we're getting more utility strike issues in our highways business because the drawings that we're provided, often by local authorities, tend to show the services are actually deeper than they are. So we've had to now go back to the start of those processes and say, if you're doing work of this nature, then take 50 mil off your tolerances and don't dig so deep. Now, you didn't need AI to do that. AI can help you get to that point quicker. But if you keep analysing the data and keep finding trends, you're going to find some signals from there to which we can act.
And I think that links back to the point of getting as much data off the end user as possible to feed in machine learning and understanding where AI and machine learning can make a massive difference in construction. We have so much data. You know, we have tens and tens of thousands of boxes. You've got even more. You've got lots of data you can feed a machine, and then it'll start pointing out where you should start targeting, how we can improve, and have them small improvements in the old marginal gains type stuff, how you can really make them using target-led data decisions.
What does digital mean to you?
I think for me, it's that ability to move things from being paper and having a form where you can start to actually standardize and capture data throughout. I see it as connective tissue between especially different functions as well. I think one of the things I've loved since I've started working in the construction industry is there's so much, you talked about data, but it's living in these little buckets or in particular teams. And actually it's that connectivity, and that's where I see digital in this, the connective tissue that joins the different processes and the data, which then enables you to move from being reactive to proactive.
Yeah.
And what I love about the construction industry as well, like sometimes I just take a step back and I'm like, everything we do is the built environment. Like, it's the streets we work on, it's the street lights at night that get us home, it's the parks that we play in. And actually having the data that understands that enables us to surface that in the correct way supports everyone.
I love that. I love that you think that it's about data, because it is. Because I see digital as a data capture, a data process, and take some action on that data. And just like you said, you know, we tend to be quite reactive. How do we use data to look back and learn things? But where we're beginning to mature to now is taking that and putting it at the very front end of the processes. So as people are being tasked to do things, they're being warned about the risks or the issues that may exist. And I think the pitfall that some of our users have is digitization means a new application or a drone that's flying, but they're just different capture points, aren't they? And it is all a data management game, I believe.
I see it as like that backbone. And I love that point as well. Like the whole topic of this podcast is, you know, advice to action. And everything you've been talking about there is about taking data and putting that into actionable insights. Like that, I love the point around how do we actually prevent those near misses? Well, let's look at the data, let's understand it. And when I was asking that question around safety, I think it's a great point. It's not just about making sure people have the right equipment. It's the work they're doing. Do they understand it? Are they trained? Do we have an organization with the right skill set to deliver against it? So we've talked quite a bit there about the importance of safety, which I think is critically clear. But another really key topic is sustainability. It's a non-negotiable. It's critically important. How do you see digital transformation enabling us to deliver against those sustainable goals that we've got?
I think we have to fess up and say that the construction industry is not a sustainable industry, do we? I guess we both dig holes, we pour concrete, we use steel. But the aim of the game is how do we leave the environments in a better position than when we joined them? And from a Balfour Beatty perspective, whilst there's areas of gain around, you know, biodiversity, how do we create better employment opportunities in the local environments, it does all come back down to data. And there seems to be a big push. So there's a need to be able to track what you're consuming and what you're using. And ultimately, the gain is going to come from eliminating waste. You know, if we only can use exactly the right amount of steel, move exactly the right amount of earth, we're going to make more progress than most organisations that you can point to.
And there is, obviously, the government, local authorities and governments are now insisting on supply chain management, using local resources. But an example around how being more sustainable doesn't necessarily sound more sustainable. If you take Hinkley Point to Sizewell, the concrete precast is being maintained and stayed in Hinkley and being boated around the south of the country, because it's cheaper to do that than it is to truck them across the country, because you only get so much on a truck. But that's data-led decisions. So looking at the cost of data and transportation, you can do many precast concrete blocks on a boat than you can, say, get 8 or 9 on the back of a truck. So using data to make them decisions and then prove that to the customer, saying actually doing this is more sustainable, is really important. And if you look at one of the biggest challenges around that is where the big infrastructure spends are happening in the country are in the middle of nowhere. So there is no local supply chain to work upon. So it's around how we manage that effectively.
And is that something that you're now being asked to do? Look at not just the financial cost, but the environmental cost of just the decisions you're making.
And a lot of projects, we now try to be sort of environmentally positive. So we leave it in a better state than we found it. So if we knock down 50 trees, we plant 100. So the idea is to be more sustainable and actually add value. And then we did a big
I think, there's still a big focus on decarbonisation, but by sustainability, there almost needs to be another word after that. And it's about a sustainable economy, isn't it? And ultimately, we're using up the world's resources. So there is a commercial aspect to this, and we need to find alternative products whilst we need to also maintain the prices of jobs. What I've enjoyed most about seeing the progress in this area is, yes, we're capturing data to make smarter decisions on products we use or the way in which we build things that are more effective. But I'm also seeing some really novel ideas around digital coming out now for sustainability, like the ecology reports that are being generated by satellite images, and then the biodiversity laid over top means we're not putting someone on the ground to do an ecology survey. And you made a point just a minute ago talking about digital that kind of connects things up, the kind of tissue that connects it up. What we're finding is new connections in core business processes. So we improve our safety with AI-generated ecology reports because most of the biodiversity assessments are done on verges on roads where we're putting people in a dangerous position. We'd never made that link before. So, it's really exciting that we go into digital thinking it's going to join up our business, and it is, but not in ways we perhaps imagined.
It feeds into things like utilisation of plant. So where the plant's coming from, idle times is a big area. So looking at targeting, putting in, battery-powered heaters rather than the person in a crane running the engine just to keep warm. So actually it's more effective for the environment to do that.
Which is massive.
It is huge.
Like hours and hours. I think something like 50% of our machine time can be idling. And if you think of the fuel saving alone, but also you think that, let's use hydrogen batteries because it's going to be more effective, but no, they only last 4 hours and we need an 8-hour shift on the equipment. But then when you actually look at the data, you're only using that equipment for 4 hours. So it isn't going to be an inhibitor. There is so much gain to be made, isn't
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's that really close connection between the safety component you talked about, right? I think there are 3 key themes that we're all talking about, which is safety, sustainability, and efficiency. And all 3 of those feed each other.
Well, I think there's something you need to add to that. I think what's become quite clear and evident, again, across industry is cost control. And I think digital, capturing data sooner, and it's one big thing we're driving at Volker is around cost control, around commercial interactions on project by project. So you've obviously companies like ISG have gone under recently, and other people in the industry have gone under in recent years. And I think tying back what we're doing to a core ERP and financial data is really critical. So when we're making these decisions, whether it's supply chain, environmental, the products we're using, the plant hire we're using, actually understanding what's that costing, whilst the environment and everything's absolutely essential what we're doing. To function as a business, we've got to have that level of cost control. And I think that's a big area that we've been focusing on. So we've started a new ERP journey, which has gone live this year, and it's central to everything we're doing. We're bolting on to make sure we're managing our cost base. So we're sustainable ourselves going forward, because that's really important.
I made a point earlier about how it feels like I'm learning every day now how to be a new CIO, because we typically serve the internal controls of our business rather than the front end. And IT investments were first about how much you're going to spend, how much you're going to save, and is it going to improve things? But when we talk about quality and safety, I think the onus is on what's the quality improvement, and that might come in effectiveness or productivity, and is there a bottom line impact? And if I think about one of the areas from a safety and a technology perspective, we've made massive gains in the last now 18 months, is moving away from paper-based permitting, working at high breaking ground, to something digital where we're capturing all the right information. We can manage the approvals process of that, but we can also see the briefings for the jobs happening in the right place. We can also take photographic evidence and use AI to do assessment. We can do all that. But what we didn't, and we did that all in the aim of safer sites, safer people. But what we didn't realize is the efficiencies that come out of that as well. And I guess it's quite nice in a way, isn't it, that we're focusing on the improvement rather than the benefit. But we are commercial organisations, and we're not a software company, Amelia, that operates at whatever margins you may. We're probably at a 3 to 5% margin, so it is important.
No, completely. And what The reason I was talking about that connectivity between the 3 points being safety, sustainability, and efficiency is if we look at sustainability and that reduction in waste, that can typically result in a reduction in cost because you are being more efficient. And you touched upon efficiency there, which is excellent.
Now, you touched upon efficiency. I would say it was about quality, and efficiency is run through safety, quality, and sustainability. I would just spin it around a little bit.
I think that is a great point. I think when we come to those 3 areas, there are so many different linkages, but also components that break off of that. And I completely agree.
I think it's understanding how they all interlink.
Yeah.
And if you improve quality, efficiencies come naturally.
Yeah.
Well, look, we give a really simple example. Okay, we spoke about how 25% of the cost base is doing things for a second or the third time. If you don't have to do that activity again and again, you're less likely to have safety issues as well.
Yeah.
And that's the reality, isn't it?
And I think that leads on to, if you look across lots of construction companies in the past and other companies, they always look internally to save money. They've never looked at the cold face to save money. We run IT cheaper, we run finance cheaper, we run HR, we just redo that contract. And this business construction's got used to spending and reworking and spending 25, 30%. They'd easily go and waste 10% just because it's in the budget. So let's just rework it, it's not a problem. And we can drive that inefficiency out, improves the quality, makes it more sustainable, because if you poured a concrete floor and you have to redo it because the waste pipe's in the wrong place, that's more concrete. That's worse for the environment. So
if we substitute the word efficiency for productivity, which I kind of feel I'm challenged with, along with a number of other leaders in the business, the rising tide of infrastructure spend really means there's not enough resource to deliver it. So digital at one point is, how do you close the resource gap?
Yeah.
And therefore, if we can be more productive, we need less people, we need to recruit less people. That's going to be ultimately very helpful for us. But I do think that there's a kind of contradictory period we're in. And I read an article the other day, which we'll refer to as Gates' Law. So back in the 70s, Bill Gates was talking about the impact technology can have on organizations. And he came up with this idea, and I think he probably ripped off somebody else, but he said he's noticed a tendency for leaders in businesses to dramatically overestimate the impact technology is going to have in the next 2 years, but massively underestimate the impact it will have in the next 10 years. And we're all sat kind of observing what's going on with artificial intelligence. And that really rung true for me, because we are really searching for payback, efficiencies and productivity when it comes to the technology. But we're only just scratching the surface of what some of these things are actually going to be doing longer term. So there's a balance between what do you invest in because you know you're going to get payback, efficiencies, and what do you invest in and take, if you like, a small leap of faith. But ultimately it's the right thing to do. And over a period, those returns are going to come to you. So as a balance, I think all technology leaders have got to be reminded of is this, massively overestimating short term, but we really don't understand the full impact.
And is that changing how you're looking at the development of your business cases to look at that long-term impact?
I think that depends who you're talking to. So I think there'll be certain roles in the business that are wanting to see the benefit, the productivity, the quality, the efficiency. There are certain elements of all businesses that I'm sure want to understand and track the cost. I think, speaking on behalf of Balfour Beatty, we would be very confident of where we should invest in technology. I think we're less confident on how that plays out in terms of the benefits. So you have to be picky and choosy and think about where are you more certain versus less certain.
And Nick, sorry.
Yeah, so some of our difference, obviously my business operates a bit different to Balfour Beatty. I've been on both sides, so I understand. And we look for a lot of agility, a lot of entrepreneurs per business, per project. So we enable people to empower people to do stuff to suit their business a lot more. So it causes me problems from a centralization perspective. But we're trying to standardize common themes on what digital technologies we're using, what we're rolling out. But we also enable people to be a bit freer. So it's a slightly different way of working in Volker, but it seems to be working all right at the moment.
If I bring us back to the topic of today about advice to action, one of the key themes we touched around at the beginning was all about adoption, understanding that end user, that real change from it being IT being a centrally driven function to actually something that's delivering a real impact in the coalface. We've talked about the power of data, getting that captured and enabling us to overlay things such as AI on top of that, but actually understanding what's actually happening out there really can help us to make a difference. And we've talked a lot about productivity and quality. And if we can use digital across those processes, where that can really make a difference. What's the biggest learning that you've had throughout your career? If you were to start it all over again, the one thing that if you were to do that, you wish that you'd known at the very beginning?
I think everything starts with a problem. And it's easy to read an advert, see some press articles that talk about a new piece of technology and think I must have that. And I think the one thing that I wish that I'd probably learned a bit earlier is you've got to tie it all the way back to what's the problem you're trying to solve and have a problem solving technique in your organization. Otherwise, it's just technology looking for a problem. And there is a place to that, for Nick's point, that that's what innovation can be. But I think when you're dealing at enterprise scale and on mass, I think you've got to coach your businesses into what are your business problems you are trying to solve. And if you can expert and be master those, and you have a process that you can follow that can bring process change, behavioral change, skills adoption, and technology all mixed together to create an outcome, then you're going to be much better than just let's buy the product and see if it works.
And one thing I learned for myself, which I think can then apply into others, is understanding people a lot more. I used to come in saying, I know what I'm doing, I understand IT. And what I found throughout my career is IT people are great at delivering IT. Business people are great at delivering business targets. So one of the challenges I've had on how's this going to help me dig a hole? How's it going to help me pour concrete? And I've got IT people who, well, they can sort of move from industry to industry. It doesn't matter if you're in manufacturing, through to logistics, through to construction. You operate Microsoft and other tools the same way throughout that. So one thing I've learned is understanding humans and understanding people and how you can make technology work for them. So since my time in Volker now, since I was at Balfour Beatty, I've understood actually how the business was a family business. It's grown, and actually it's grown quite rapidly over the past few years. And people who have been there for many, many years who have always worked this way. We've got new people coming into IT who have come from other industries who worked in a certain way, and trying to marry the two between Jon's point earlier around we've got so much work going on, we haven't got enough competent people in the country to deliver. So getting the best out of people, you need to put yourselves into the mindset of who you're delivering to and to the customer. And I suppose it's a changing face of customer, getting a greater educated customer. So somewhere where it's national highways through to Network Rail to others, they're more educated in the digital way of working. So construction cannot operate the way it's always operated. But trying to get that to someone who's been doing it for 40 years is a big challenge.
I think Nick's just made an excellent point that, you know, finding the right commercial agreements, finding the right customer that is willing to take you on a digitization journey is hugely important. You can't do it alone as a contractor. You've got a supply chain that need to be with you, and you need a progressive customer, but you also need the commercial vehicles that give you room to try things that are different as well. And we probably don't talk enough about that. I know this isn't a podcast about the challenges of, but unless you can set those right parameters up, you're probably not going to create that culture of change. Yeah, I'll give you an example. We operate under a large amount of frameworks now for our regional construction. But what frameworks do is they instill a longer term thinking and allow you to create blueprints about how you're going to deliver each job. So we know that if we can insert technology well into the start of a job, and the next one that comes will adopt that. And that's because the customer's got a long-term view rather than a race to the bottom and we'll contract on price.
And on the other side of that is you've got jobs that might have 6 months, 12 months left to run. There's less of a change to go in and do the work because there's no point. But it does mean, I think the way industry is going, if you start right, you can finish right and that delivery. But there's sometimes a race to get these products out there. But if a project's got 6 months to run, you can't stop a project halfway through and change the process unless there's real benefit to it.
What I heard as a common theme across both of your answers was change culture and having people at the center of that with a solution mindset that can really look at a problem slightly differently and enable the business to then evolve and change and become safer, more sustainable, more efficient / productive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not all about kind of culture. I think can be driven by individuals as well. And whilst we'd like to think there's a groundswell of opinion and positivity towards digital. It's not always the case, and it does take some fire starters or some evangelists or people that are just relentless within their business units that step forward and say, I'm not prepared to walk past that problem anymore, and I do want to do something different. So I think there's also a bit about, if you are running a technology team from the center, you need to understand where those sparks of energy and ingenuity are coming from the business and empower them somehow. Otherwise, it can just be a little bit samey.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And we did it. We deconstructed digital.